Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My presentation is going to be quite quick and short, I hope. I usually have a problem with quick and short. Just to give a bit of background about me, I'm in the public management department, and we generally have masses of classes. Currently, I have 2 groups at second year, each with a size of about 145 students. So reading through assignments and trying to detect plagiarism or original work is quite a task. I think I basically just got annoyed at the amount of plagiarism in the student assignments and so forth. And I think based on the past 3 years' experience, it was a bit difficult by the time you assess the assignments, either too late to do something about it, and generally speaking, students actually get away with it. And I think this is my sort of first exposure in really understanding Blackboard and the use of SafeAssign as a capacity development tool. So I teach 3 groups generally. It's first year students or full-time students, and then I teach at least 48 at Belleville campus and about 72 at Cape Town campus part-time. And naturally all of the issues, the coming late, the transport, and that impacts on your students. So this is why I'm here today, to try and learn about different ways of doing things. I think in terms of just my students and their particular context, in the group I'm really going to speak about the most is the full-time group. Their instructional reality is that they're only on campus for the first quarter, and then they basically go into in-service for the next quarter. We have 5 subjects that they have to get through, and you can imagine all of us is fighting for time and space, and they too is quite excited about the venture for actually going into the workplace. So this also offers a bit of its own reality challenges. I think a lot of what I like them to do is also engage with technologies and so on, and they tend to do quite a bit of PowerPoint. So that's just to transport you into my space. So again, when I looked at SafeAssign, I just was fed up at that point. I knew very little about Blackboard, and then I thought, well, I went for a bit of the training. I played around. I think I went for the training after I actually started. So I just went around and I created the instruction, and that was just what I knew about Blackboard and how I could possibly use it. So I think you all know a little bit about Blackboard, so this is just the background and exactly what the ideal is of SafeAssign. So I treated it as my training platform, and my approach was more about original work that I wanted from the students. Okay, so I think just thinking of my own blend, how do I actually use technology? And I think my own understanding is the use of technology, that all my slides is on PowerPoint and I upload it on Blackboard. And essentially for me, Blackboard is just that communication platform. Not for anything. We're busy phasing out the current degree program. And I think during the fees must fall period, I basically did the narrated PowerPoint slides, which I found extremely time consuming. And naturally, if you're phasing out a degree, I'm not necessarily going to integrate technology yet. And that's really been the reality over the last 2 years and so forth. So again, just trying to deal with the actual issue, because what am I putting out in practice? Somebody that actually can't write. And knowing and being in government, I'd been there for at least 7 years, the demand on actually making presentations in front of people is high, and you can't really fail at that given point. So I needed to do something about making sure that they're actually fairly good when they come out of my hands. I worked in extremely transversal portfolio, so virtually most departments, if they would ask the students, where do you come from, and my name is mentioned, they would know who I am. So each student going out actually is tagged and asked about me, and they come back and they tell me. So really, the premium is high not to produce a bad quality student. This is locking out here on the system, sir. Technology cannot fail me now. Oh, and I'm not an Apple junkie. Okay, so obviously in the classroom setup, I talk a lot. So I think I want to give them too much, but you can actually see them fading. I also explain on the board excessively, or not excessively, but I try to do the practical example. So, still putting an example, making sense. I don't really know if it works, but I think my own personal creativity comes out in that, and that's why you see copy or pictures of my own slides, because one day when I write that textbook, those things are going to become quite useful. So I think just how I approached SafeAssign, I really said it's do or die. I could not help them. I did not know enough. So the best was go and sit. If you have a problem, go to IT. So when they started coming back to me, it's locking me out and all of that, I found myself not knowing. I said, no, man, it will work. It's Blackboard. There is a big back office support. Back office support, do your thing with SafeAssign. And that really was how we navigated jointly through the process. And I think really when I set it up, so obviously the design part was there, I just gave a blanket instruction. If you don't do it, I'll only mark your assignment up to 40%. So naturally, everybody would probably do it, but I had no idea or guarantee that they would actually do it, because the demand on them sitting there and using it was more for their own account in terms of their own time, under the conditions that they really didn't have a lot of time in the first semester. I think what was good about it, I at least made the assignment due in the VAC. So they could actually, just before they go off, spend a little bit of time. And that was largely thinking about all of the demands and everybody wanting to pack everything into the first semester. So yeah, and that's really how we basically went and how we taught each other. I think the learning exercise for me really was that we all learned together. I still had no idea how I was going to use or mark electronically. So my instruction was, bring me the hard copy, print out proof that you actually did it. And that's how I did it. And I still assessed hard copy and so on. So that, I think, was quite interesting, but it also allowed me to talk to them. And this is where I actually got the idea of saying that this is a good instrument, because a lot of their verbal account was so interesting. And we should have done this in first year and so forth. But I think more so because I like statistics and monitoring things, I then post facto discovered, and this is past their course, the last 2 weeks putting this presentation together, that it actually gives me quite a bit of statistical analysis. And I could now really go and look at whether it was a good thing to basically introduce. I think here, to their basic credit, and because they're such a large group, I set the closing times at different times because they said they had a problem. So there was no rocket science and so on. First closing date, next closing date, and so on. So this is really how my part-time group actually used the platform. And I think because they had the whole semester to work, they were quite casual about it, to the level that quite a few of them actually didn't even bother to submit to SafeAssign. But I think for me, this was the most interesting information that it revealed. It kind of gave me an idea how many attempts the students actually took to get original work. And I think here, for me, it really showed that 144 out of the 177 was really good compliant students that made the first deadline date. And I thought that was pretty phenomenal. At the second part, you know, I had 11 students. But within the 11, it was also somebody that had a high plagiarism percentage that went to go and try and fix the assignment again. Equally so in the last submission date, I had 16, and also the overlap of somebody that at that particular point wanted to improve their assignment and so on. So I think also then when I looked at the statistics, I looked at the amount of attempts that a student made. So the maximum was 18 attempts to try and fix their assignment, but essentially in the first three attempts, or actually up to 5 or 6 attempts, you can actually see that this is something that they have been struggling with to actually write, but more so that they actually have the appetite to want to improve themselves. Okay, so also just the activities summary in terms of the time spent, 200 and odd minutes. So I thought, shoo, that's quite a bit of time. So obviously when you do design, you have to take the timing into consideration, and that would be, I think, fairly important. I think the challenge is also, obviously, it's a new thing. We don't know. It's a sense of frustration. And you had no help from your lecturer. You had to go and find your way. So I'm sure that they felt very challenged by that. I think also just the difficulty in resolving their own writing skills. And I think that's possibly the first time that they met themselves in terms of their own writing. They would get it from me in terms of a good or a bad grade, but here they had an opportunity to meet themselves and to sort of look at their personal best or worst. So I think really it was quite an adventure, I think. But I think just if ever we speak about a quality student, sticking to deadlines, because most of us complain mostly, that for me was the greatest learning in this particular process. And here again, their verbal feedback, writing skills improved, and all of this. We had to learn Harvard system and so on. It's too time consuming, it's excellent, it's too difficult. But I've got a little bit of a video that I can play. Can the magic man, oh okay, there. I'm a bit blind with my own specs. Okay, not that one. So can one of the magic people with the magic, oh okay, there is it, I see it.
I think it was very useful because we no longer had to hide behind the words of other people. Even though we thought maybe that we were saying the same thing that we were thinking, but it's forced us to think on ourselves about the topic and to actually do more research, because you can't, other experience that you can't use like few references. You need to research more so you can find more information, so you can be able to elaborate more. Because if you're only using few authors, the plagiarism will be high. So you need to find more sources to help you.
Okay, thank you.
And at the same time, I guess it keeps you on your toes to engage with the assignment and be able to understand the content of different authors at the same time, so that you can create a more understandable argument in your assignment that comes from you, but with an influence of different authors at the same time, rather than before we would just take information from different authors and try to change it here and there, and we would still not understand what is really required for us to do. So yeah, it has forced us to concentrate more on the assignment and try to create our own understanding in the given topic.
Okay. In terms of time spent, what are your opinions? You think it was a worthwhile capacity development exercise for you?
Okay, I would say in terms of time spent, we had to try more than once, and we had to make a lot of changes, because, and bear in mind that we were in our second year, So at least it was, if it was introduced in our first year, we would be used to it. We were used to just taking information from authors. So it extended the time of us executing assignments because we had to be more careful as to what we write and how we put it into context.
To be honest, this thing of subjects online, it's kind of difficult because most of us, like students, we use to do copy and paste. We just copy and then paste something that we don't understand what like it says, or we don't understand like what it's all about. As long as we did the assignment and submit it, and then the assignment helped me like now I'm able like to summarize something like in my own words, where like even if I read it, I understand it. And then because at first, while I was doing my first year, to be honest, 85% of my assignment I would just do copy and paste, and then I don't even understand like what's going on. And then this thing, it was also putting me under pressure because like there were a lot of incorrect stuff where like I need to change. But then yeah, the assignment was useful and I really enjoyed it, although I failed it. I'm just kidding. I passed it. I passed it. Yeah, it was useful with SafeAssign, although we were complaining. Some of us saw that the assignment on submitting online is useful and it will help you like to know, even if you are given an assignment, you know what it's all about, and then you will have like more interest in what's going on. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else like to say something?
So, for this introduction of this SafeAssign, I think it will give us for a more capacity of critical analyzing some if you've given a topic to do it, not doing like we do a copy and paste, because actually we do a copy and paste and take that word from someone and then paste it. It's our own. But this SafeAssign is gonna be like more giving to give the capacity to know, to argue on what the other authors have said what is happening about this topic of yours, and then now we more like, okay, now I have to argue against what is they say, and then I can argue and also attribute to the other authors of have already said that. And it will be much useful if we can start it from the first year.
Okay, so I think that sort of is possibly the self-testimony from the student's perspective and the journey that we all basically took together. Thank you.
Well, we have 3 minutes before lunch is served. Are there any questions?
I was to ask you, what was your percentage of acceptable plagiarism?
I set it at 20%. Without not knowing what the official position is here, and I am trying to get an idea of what is the CPUT official acceptable position.
How did you find when you then did that? Was it quite good writing when you did the marking?
It was so much of a pleasure to actually mark the essays, you know, because you can see the difference between their own mother tongue and the cut and paste versions and so on. So for me, it was quite a wonderful experience to finally enjoy marking an assignment. Thank you.
No other questions? Regarding page similarity? Thank you.
Okay.